It was a Thursday night, just past 10 p.m., when the rain came down like a curtain tearing through the city. Beneath the flickering glow of a street lamp, a young woman stood shivering in a thin denim jacket, her shoes soaked through. Her name was Emma Clark, barely 24, book-smart but battered by reality, waiting for the last subway train that always seemed to come late on nights like this. But tonight wasn't just another night. Something about the air felt off, as if fate was holding its breath. Across the street, under the awning of a closed newsstand, Nathan Callahan stood soaked to the bone, staring down at a phone that wouldn't turn on. It had been stolen. So had his wallet. So had every trace of who he was. His designer coat was now useless against the rain. He looked out of place, too polished for the grime around him. And yet, there he stood, unrecognizable even to himself. The city he once ruled from skyscraper boardrooms now towered over him like a stranger. Emma caught sight of him. He was clearly lost, disoriented, but trying to act like he wasn't. People passed by without looking twice. She hesitated. Her instincts screamed to stay out of it, but her heart, stubborn and tired, whispered otherwise. She crossed the street, pulling her half-broken umbrella tighter over her head. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice cautious, but kind. Nathan looked up, startled, unsure whether to lie or break. "I just need to get home," he said, blinking water from his eyes. "But I have no cash, no phone. I got robbed." He tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. Emma studied him. She'd heard enough stories to be suspicious, but something in his voice didn't feel rehearsed. It felt raw. And maybe, just maybe, she saw a reflection of herself there. Someone, on the edge, trying to hold it together. Without another word, she dug into her back pocket and pulled out the last $10 bill she had. "There's a train leaving in 5 minutes," she said. "You're getting on it." Nathan's eyes widened. "I can't take that," he began, but she shoved it into his hand. "You already did." She turned and walked back toward the station without looking back. He stood frozen, the money in his hand like a lifeline made of paper and kindness. They boarded the same train, a few cars apart. Nathan watched her through the glass divider. She didn't notice. She just stared out the window, face calm, as if she hadn't just changed the course of a stranger's night. As if she hadn't just saved him from something deeper than the cold. He didn't know her name, didn't even know why she helped him. But something about her stuck. He hadn't felt that kind of humanity in years. Emma got off 2 stops before Nathan. She vanished into the crowd, swallowed by the dark and drizzle. He watched her go, a strange ache forming in his chest. It wasn't attraction, it was recognition. Whoever she was, she had reminded him of something he had lost long ago. Himself. When he finally stepped off the train, he wandered the streets, until he reached a hotel. His hotel, but looking the way he did, the staff barely recognized him. Inside the presidential suite, he sat alone, on the edge of a velvet chair, still holding the crumpled $10 bill. His assistant had replaced everything: wallet, phone, dry clothes. But something in him refused to let go of the night. That girl, whoever she was, had done something no one else in his world would. She helped without asking anything in return. She helped because she could. He couldn't sleep. Not with her face burned into the back of his mind. She had a scar above. Her eyebrow faint, like a story left untold. He found himself replaying her voice, her walk, the way she didn't flinch at his desperation. It rattled him. He, Nathan Callahan, heir to a billion-dollar empire, had been saved by someone with holes in her sneakers. The next morning, over black, coffee and untouched breakfast, he made a decision. He had to find her, not because he owed her, not because of guilt, but because she represented something he thought no longer existed in the world he lived in: goodness without price. He instructed his driver to go back to that same train station. "Wait as long as it takes," he said. "I'll recognize her." For 3 days he returned to that same bench, each morning, each evening, waiting, watching. He started to memorize faces, scents, sounds of the platform. And then, on the 4th morning, there she was, hair tied up, earbuds in, a cup of coffee in hand. She hadn't seen him yet. He stepped forward, heart thudding like it hadn't in years. This was it. "Hey," he said softly. She looked up, confused. Her eyes narrowed slightly, defensive. "Do I know you?" Nathan smiled. "Not yet." Emma's brows furrowed. The man in front of her looked cleaner now, composed, wearing a tailored coat that didn't match the weather or the station, but there was no mistaking his face. It was him, the guy from the rain, the one she gave her last $10 to. "Wait," she said slowly. "You're—" "Nathan," he replied quickly. "Nathan Callahan." His name meant nothing to her. That made him smile a little, though he didn't show it. "You helped me out the other night. I just—" He paused, unsure of what exactly he was doing. "I wanted to thank you." Emma tilted her head. "You found me just to say thanks?" Her tone wasn't rude, just skeptical. Nathan nodded almost sheepishly. "And maybe buy you a coffee." She stared at him, studying his posture. There was confidence there, but it didn't feel arrogant. If anything, he looked nervous. "You don't owe me anything," she said flatly. "I know," he replied, "but I'd still like to." Something about his sincerity made her pause. Emma wasn't naive, but she wasn't cold either. She glanced at the line forming behind her and sighed. "Fine, 10 minutes. There's a cart up the block." She walked ahead, not waiting for him to follow. He did. They sat on a bench outside the corner cafe, each holding a steaming paper cup. Nathan sipped cautiously, adjusting to the bitterness. Emma noticed. "Not your kind of coffee." "No, it's good," he said, forcing a smile. "Just different." She raised an eyebrow. "So what do you usually drink?" He hesitated. "Imported Ethiopian blends. With cinnamon foam, usually?" She laughed, short and dry. "Of course you do." They were quiet for a moment. Nathan studied her face when she wasn't looking. Sharp jawline, tired eyes, lips pressed tight like someone always waiting for the next hit life. "Would throw." "You live around here?" he asked, trying not to sound too interested. "More or less," she answered, shrugging. "Work nearby." Emma nodded. "Bookstore, on 5th and Lenox. Part-time." Nathan filed that away in his mind. "I've always loved bookstores," he lied. She glanced at him, smirking. "Sure you have." He chuckled, then turned serious. "Why did you help me, Emma?" She blinked, caught off guard by how he said her name. "Because you needed it. People who do that sometimes." "Not in my world," he muttered, almost to himself. She heard him but didn't comment. Nathan looked down at his coffee. "Can I tell you something a little weird?" She didn't answer but didn't walk away either. "I run a hotel group, well, co-run, my family's business. We're kind of well known." Emma waited. "I've had people open doors for me my whole life. Smile because they had to. Help because they were paid. That night, you were the first person who just helped." Emma didn't blink. "So now you want to repay me because it bothers you that someone helped you without needing a reason." Nathan winced. "No, I mean, maybe, partly, but also because it felt real. You were real." She looked at him for a long time, then stood. "Well, Nathan Callahan, CEO of Coffee Foam, I've got to get to work." He rose quickly. "Can I walk with you?" She thought for a second. "Only if you don't talk about Ethiopian blends." They walked together, her pace quick and unfussy. He asked simple questions. She gave short answers. He didn't push. When they reached the bookstore, Emma stopped. "This is me." He glanced at the dusty window display. "I might stop by sometime." She narrowed her eyes. "You're not going to stalk me, are you?" He grinned. "Only in the literary sense." As she pushed the door open, Emma turned back. "Hey, thanks for the coffee." He nodded. Thanks for the subway. Inside, Emma shook her head. What the hell was that? Outside, Nathan stood for a long minute, watching her disappear behind shelves of forgotten stories. He wasn't sure what he was doing, but for the first time in years, it didn't feel calculated, and somewhere deep inside him, something was shifting. Nathan stepped into the penthouse like a stranger breaking into his own life. Everything was polished, symmetrical, and cold. The marble floor beneath his shoes echoed as he walked, bouncing back silence. His assistant had left a note on the kitchen counter, another board meeting, another strategy update, another reminder that he didn't belong in the chaos of real life. Not really. He looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring down at the city where he'd just shared burnt coffee with a girl who didn't care about his last name. He couldn't stop thinking about her, Emma Clark. She hadn't smiled much, hadn't asked what he did, hadn't even seemed curious. But when she did look at him, really look, he felt seen in a way he never had in a boardroom. Later that night, he found himself searching online, not stalking, just curiosity. A few posts on an old blog she once ran. A quote she'd scribbled somewhere. The only thing more tragic than being invisible is pretending you're not. That line echoed through him like a bell. He didn't know why it mattered, only that it did. Across the city, Emma climbed the creaky stairs to her apartment. It was small, one bedroom, a cracked window she couldn't afford to fix, and walls so thin she could hear her neighbor's TV every night. But it was hers, sort of. Rent was due next week, and her hours at the bookstore had been cut again. Still, she sat down at her cluttered desk, flipping through a worn notebook, a list titled Things That Might Still Matter. Nathan wasn't on the list, but her thoughts drifted to him anyway. The next morning he walked into the bookstore like he'd done it 100 times before. Emma was shelving books behind the counter, earbuds in. When she saw him, she didn't smile. "You again?" she asked, one brow raised. Nathan held up 2 coffees like peace offerings. "Burnt, just how you like it." Emma took the cup, narrowed her eyes. "Still trying to pay me back?" He shrugged. "Maybe I just wanted to see if you actually work here." She sipped the coffee. "You're wasting your time." "I've got a lot of it to waste." Emma rolled her eyes, but something in her relaxed. She nodded toward the shelves. "If you're going to lurk, make yourself useful. That stack goes in fiction." He blinked. "You're putting me to work? You said you wanted to stay. There's a price." So Nathan spent the next hour alphabetizing paperbacks and dusting shelves he didn't know existed. Emma watched from behind the counter, pretending not to notice how carefully he moved, how out of place he looked, how he still didn't complain. They talked about books. She loved the ones with quiet pain. He admitted he hadn't read for leisure since college, but something about her pulled his answers out anyway. He told her about his sister who died when he was 17, how silence had lived in his family ever since. Emma listened without interruption. She didn't say sorry, she just handed him a worn copy of The Bell Jar. "You should read this," she said. He looked down at the faded cover. "Is it sad?" "Yes," she replied, "but it's honest." By the time he left, the store had emptied, and the city outside was swallowed in gold dusk. Emma locked the door behind him, then leaned against it for a beat longer than necessary. Something was shifting. Nathan got into his car, holding the book like a map he didn't know how to read. Back in her apartment, Emma opened her notebook again. She added a new line to the list. Honest conversations with strangers. She hesitated, then underlined it. The rain came back 2 days later, softer this time, like an old memory trying to return unnoticed. Nathan stood across from the bookstore, under the same green awning where he had once watched her disappear. He hadn't planned on stopping by today. He told himself he had things to do, calls to make, contracts to review. But something pulled him back. Not obligation, not guilt. Just her. Emma was restocking the used section, headphones dangling around her neck. She didn't look up when he entered. Nathan waited, quietly watching her move through the aisles with the ease of someone who belonged to the silence between pages. Finally, she noticed him. "You again," she said, voice flat, but her lips fought a smile. "Should I be worried?" "Probably," he answered with a smirk. "I've got a dangerous addiction to mediocre coffee and judgmental glances." Emma chuckled, shaking her head. "And you think I'm the one who needs therapy?" He leaned against the front counter, less composed than usual. "Do you ever think about what your life would have looked like if just one thing had gone differently?" Emma looked at him, really looked, and for the first time she saw something cracked behind his eyes. "What happened?" she asked, not teasing this time. Nathan exhaled, glancing down at his hands. "I had this friend, almost a brother, Jonah. We grew up in the same halls, the same pressure. Our families were tied together by old money and older promises. Then he disappeared. Not literally, just emotionally. One day, he stopped pretending to care. Quit the company, cut everyone off." Emma said nothing. She just listened. Nathan continued, "The last time I saw him, we were both pretending we weren't drowning. He said to me, 'One day you'll wake up and realize none of this is yours.' I laughed at him, thought he was weak, but now, I wonder if he was just early." The silence hung between them. Then Emma finally spoke. "And you? Are you waking up now?" He looked at her, startled by the clarity in her voice. "I think so, maybe, but it's messy." "It's supposed to be," she said. He stared at her for a moment. "Why do you always know what to say?" Emma shrugged. "I spend a lot of time alone. That's when people get good at reading the quiet." Later that day, Emma walked home alone, umbrella tucked under her arm, notebook pressed to her chest. She was used to puzzles, of books, of people, but Nathan was different. He offered no summaries, no blurbs, just fragments. She wasn't sure if that intrigued her or scared her. Inside his penthouse, Nathan dug out an old photograph, him and Jonah, barely 20, laughing over something that no longer mattered. That laugh had been real, that moment. He placed the photo on his desk beside the book Emma had given him, The Bell Jar, still unread. That night, Emma scribbled another entry in her notebook. "People wear stories like suits. Some are tailored, some still have the tags on." She didn't write his name, but she didn't need to. Meanwhile, Nathan picked up the book, opened to the first page, and started reading. And the rain outside kept falling, as if the sky, too, needed to remember how to feel. The bell above the bookstore door jingled like a whisper as Nathan entered, his coat still damp from a storm that hadn't quite passed. Emma glanced up from behind the counter, expecting the usual grin and sly remark. But today, Nathan looked different, like someone who hadn't slept, like someone who just walked away from something that had taken too much of him. He placed the book she had lent him on the counter, its cover slightly worn now from use. "Finished it," he said, voice low. Emma blinked, surprised. "Already?" He nodded. "Last night. Couldn't put it down." She took the book, fingers brushing his for a moment. "And," Nathan gave a tired smile, "it didn't fix anything, but it explained a few things I didn't know needed explaining." Emma tilted her head. "That's what good books do." Nathan looked around, eyes scanning the old walls, the shelves stuffed with forgotten stories. "You ever think about leaving this place?" he asked. "Starting somewhere new?" Emma raised an eyebrow. "Is that a question or a proposal?" His smile twitched. "Just a thought." They didn't talk much after that. Customers trickled in and out. Nathan lingered in the poetry aisle, reading quietly. Emma returned to her ledger, but her mind kept drifting. When her shift ended, Nathan offered to walk her home. She almost declined. Almost. But something in his silence made her say yes. They walked side by side through the darkening streets, umbrellas barely, keeping up with the drizzle. "You ever wonder," Nathan said suddenly, "if people only see what they want to see in you?" Emma kept walking. "I think most people don't really look at all." He paused at the corner outside her building. "You do," he said quietly. She glanced at him, unsure whether to be flattered or afraid. "Maybe I just have good instincts." Nathan's gaze held hers for a moment too long. Then he stepped back. "Good night, Emma." She watched him walk away until the fog swallowed him. Inside, her apartment felt colder than usual. She made tea, opened her notebook and wrote, "There's something broken in him, but he hides it like it's gold." Nathan returned to his penthouse, only to find a visitor waiting, his father. Gregory Callahan stood with his back to the skyline, drink in hand, face as unreadable as always. "You've been hard to reach," he said without looking. Nathan dropped his coat on a chair. "Maybe because I didn't want to be reached." Gregory turned, expression tight. "The board is asking questions. You've missed 2 strategy meetings. Your silence costs more than you think." Nathan poured a glass of water, ignoring the accusation. "What if I don't care what it costs?" His father's jaw tensed. "You don't have the luxury of not caring, not with your name, your legacy." Nathan's laugh was short and hollow. "Legacy? You mean that list of people we've stepped over to build empty towers?" Gregory's voice sharpened. "You're a Callahan. Act like one." Nathan looked him dead in the eye. "Maybe I don't want to be." The older man left without another word. That night, Nathan stood on his balcony, the wind whipping through his hair. Below, the city buzzed like it didn't know who he was, or didn't care. For the first time, that felt more like freedom than loss. The next morning, Emma found an envelope slipped under the bookstore door. Inside was a card, unmarked, with only one sentence. "Would you come with me if I asked?" No name, no return address. But she didn't need either. She closed the shop early that day. Emma stood in front of her closet, staring at a row of thrifted sweaters and faded jeans, as if choosing one might change what was about to happen. The envelope still sat on her dresser, its message running loops in her head. "Would you come with me if I asked?" It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It wasn't even clear. But it was something. And Emma had always responded to things that weren't fully formed. She chose the grey coat with the missing button, practical, ambiguous. Her fingers trembled slightly as she tied her boots. She wasn't nervous because she was afraid of Nathan. She was nervous because she wasn't. That scared her more than it should have. Outside, the wind had calmed, but the city still carried that scent of a storm just missed. Nathan was waiting, by the river, hands buried in his coat pockets, face tight with whatever he wasn't saying. Emma approached quietly. He noticed her instantly. "You came," he said, almost surprised. "You asked," she replied, shrugging. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Walk with me." They walked along the waterfront, passing joggers and couples and people who never once glanced their way. Nathan kept pace with her, but his silence was heavier than usual. Finally, she broke it. "So, ask." He looked at her, then back at the ground. "There's a place I want to show you, a few hours north." Emma frowned. "That's a bit vague." "It's a property. Used to be a hotel, now it's barely bones. But it's quiet, raw, like it's waiting for someone to give it purpose again." He paused. "I want to rebuild it from scratch. Not as a Callahan project, as mine." Emma blinked. "Okay. And where do I come in?" Nathan hesitated. "I want you to help me design the space. Not the construction, the heart of it. A library, a cafe, a place people go to remember how to feel small in a good way." He turned to her fully now. You see people, Emma. I don't. I don't know how to make something real without you. She swallowed hard. You don't even know me. That's not true, he said softly. I just don't know all the names for the ways I do. Emma looked away. The river glinted like glass. You're asking me to drop everything for a dream you haven't even started. I'm asking you to believe in something that isn't finished, just like me. They were quiet for a long moment. I'll think about it, Emma finally said. Nathan smiled gently. That's all I ask. When she returned home, she made tea without tasting it, sat on the floor, and pulled her notebook from under the bed. No music, no noise, just ink and questions. Is it foolish to trust someone who doesn't trust himself? She closed the book before she could answer. Nathan, meanwhile, sat in his study, maps and plans spread across the table, the hotel's image slowly forming in his mind. Not glass, not marble, just stone and light and space for breath, something his world had never made room for. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You're being watched, the board knows. He stared at the screen, expression unreadable. Then he deleted the message without replying. If they wanted to watch, let them. For the first time, he had something worth protecting. The road north was lined with trees, shedding the last of their golden leaves, the kind of autumn that felt like a memory, even as it happened. Nathan drove in silence, occasionally glancing at Emma, who sat beside him, arms crossed, eyes on the window. She hadn't said much since they left the city, but she hadn't turned around either. That had to count for something. When they reached the old hotel grounds, Emma stepped out first. The building was a ruin of what it once was. Cracked stone, shuttered windows, weeds climbing over fallen archways. But there was beauty in it too, the kind that whispered stories, instead of shouting them. She walked slowly, fingers brushing over faded brick. It feels quiet, she said finally. Nathan nodded. It was a sanctuary once. My mother loved it here. Emma glanced at him. Was she like you? He paused. No, she was better. He knelt near the front steps, brushing away debris to reveal a rusted plaque, the Winslow Retreat. Emma tilted her head. That's not your name. It was hers, Nathan replied. She opened it with money my father never asked where came from. When she died, he let it rot. He stood, brushing dirt from his hands. I want to bring it back, not for the press, for the quiet. Emma watched him, then nodded once. Show me inside. The inside was worse, molded wallpaper, collapsed beams, dust thick as snow. But Emma didn't flinch. She walked through it like she could already see what it might become. You'd need permits, a new foundation, plumbing, electricity, safety codes. Nathan smiled. You really have thought about this. I've lived in enough broken places to know what they need, she said. They mapped out rooms with their footsteps. A reading lounge where the old ballroom stood, a sunlit cafe in the east wing. Big windows, Emma said, her eyes shining for the first time. People need sunlight, especially the ones who don't know they do. Nathan studied her. Is that why you don't turn the lights on in your apartment until after dark? She froze. You've never been there. I've seen you through the windows, he said softly. When I waited by the bookstore. Emma turned away. That's not romantic, that's unsettling. I know, he admitted. But it wasn't about watching you. It was about reminding myself that people like you exist. She didn't respond. That night they stayed in a small motel down the road. Separate rooms, shared silence. Emma sat by the window, notebook in her lap. She wrote, what if this turns out to be nothing? What if it turns out to be everything? Next door, Nathan couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, hearing his mother's laugh in the walls of a place that barely stood. He remembered her hands in the garden, the scent of lavender. He whispered to the dark, I'll get it right this time. The next morning, over lukewarm coffee, Emma looked at the blueprints he'd sketched. "You really want a library?" she asked. "Not just shelves. A space for voices that haven't been heard." He looked up. "I was hoping you'd curate it." Emma stared at the plans, then back at him. "You're asking a lot." "I know." "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll help you." Neither of them said what they felt. Not yet. But something in the air between them settled. Back in the city, a boardroom full of men in suits discussed Nathan's absence like it was an infection. "He's going rogue," one of them said. "He's putting our holdings at risk." Another leaned forward. "Maybe it's time we take the reins back." No one disagreed. That same evening, Nathan received an envelope slid under his penthouse door. Inside, a black and white photo of him and Emma walking near the bookstore. On the back, a single line: "Clean this up, or we will." Emma noticed the shift in Nathan the moment they returned to the city. He was quieter, more distracted, checking his phone like it might whisper something deadly. She didn't ask at first. She had learned early that pushing people only made them close the doors faster. But his energy wasn't just different. It was cold, like something had crawled between them. The bookstore felt warmer than ever by contrast. The smell of old pages and cheap coffee grounded her. She returned to her routine, cataloging books, helping lost students, recommending poetry that wouldn't sell. But the quiet between her and Nathan grew, stretched like thread pulled too far. He still came by, still lingered in the aisles, but his eyes didn't rest on her the way they used to. One afternoon she found a book on the counter, one she hadn't stocked. Inside was a note, his handwriting. "Some things are easier to say this way." She opened it. Between pages were letters, long and unfiltered, letters he hadn't sent, about guilt, about losing Jonah, about what it felt like to sit in meetings with people who measured value by profit margins, about how Emma's voice was the first uncalculated thing in his life. She sat in the back of the store, reading them for hours, but then, the next day, he didn't come. Or the day after that. Emma called once, no answer, no voicemail. By the third day she knew something was wrong. She took the subway uptown, heart thudding, unsure if she had the right to show up. The doorman at his building recognized her. "Miss Clark?" he asked, surprised. "I didn't think he was seeing anyone this week," she frowned. "He's not?" The man hesitated. "There were visitors, corporate types. He didn't seem happy to see them." Emma took the elevator up. She knocked, then again. Nothing. She was about to leave when the door opened slightly, just enough for Nathan's voice to slip through. "You shouldn't be here." His tone wasn't angry. It was afraid. "What happened?" she asked. "They know about us," he said flatly. "Who's they?" "The board. My father. Everyone who sees people as threats, not human." Emma stared at the door. "So what now? You ghost me to keep me safe. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From being part of your life?" There was silence. "Then you don't understand, Emma. They'll come after you, not just legally. They'll ruin your name, your work, your peace. They've done it before." Emma stepped back, heart heavy. "Then maybe they're not the ones worth protecting." The door never opened fully. She left without another word. That night Nathan sat alone, drink untouched, staring at the photograph on his desk, the one of them walking together. He remembered her hand brushing his coat, her laugh, her stubbornness, and he realized what scared him wasn't the board. It was needing someone he couldn't control. Emma cried on the subway ride home, not because of heartbreak, but because she'd let herself believe it could be different. The next morning, she found a package at her apartment door. Inside, a blueprint for the hotel's library, marked with her notes in pencil and his additions in ink. At the bottom, one line: "I still want to build this with you, if you still believe in it." She closed the box, and didn't decide right away. Emma placed the blueprint on her kitchen table, smoothing it out with the flat of her hand. It was worn from being folded, corners slightly frayed. Her notes were there, small, ideas scrawled in pencil, hopeful and unfinished, and Nathan's responses in darker ink, careful and deliberate. Together, the page looked like something built between them, line by line. She stared at it for a long time before making tea she wouldn't drink. Her phone buzzed once. A message from her manager. "Can you cover the Saturday shift? Lucia's sick." She stared at the screen, thinking how easy it would be to say yes and pretend none of this, him, the hotel, the risk, had ever mattered. She typed sure, but didn't. Hit send. Across the city, Nathan stood in front of the Callahan Enterprises boardroom, wearing a suit that felt tighter than usual, like it knew he didn't belong anymore. Inside, men twice his age sat with hands folded and eyes sharp. His father, Gregory, didn't speak first. That job went to a man named Shaw, head of acquisitions, ruthless by reputation. "You've been distracted," Shaw began, sliding a folder across the table. "Your personal activities have drawn attention, and not the profitable kind." Nathan opened the folder. Photos, reports. One of Emma at the bookstore, another of her walking home, a background file that read like a warning label. "This is harassment," Nathan said coldly. Shaw shrugged. "It's protection. Your legacy isn't yours alone, Nathan. It belongs to the company, and we won't let you jeopardize that." His father finally spoke. "End this. Whatever it is, walk away clean. Focus on what matters." Nathan stood slowly. "You mean what matters to you?" Gregory's voice was hard. "You've been groomed for this since before you could talk. We don't throw that away for idealism." Nathan stared at the photos. "What if idealism is the only honest thing I have left?" He walked out. Back at the bookstore, Emma stood behind the register, trying to read, but failing to absorb. A single word. The front bell rang. But it wasn't a customer. It was Maya, Emma's best friend from college. She hadn't seen her in months. "Maya?" Emma asked, stunned. "How?" "I saw a picture of you online," Maya said, holding up her phone. "You and some guy. Pretty famous guy, apparently." Emma's stomach dropped. "Where did you—" "Some gossip site. And now there's a post on your old poetry blog, too. People are sharing your work again, like you're some tragic romantic muse or something." She paused. "Is it true? You're with Nathan Callahan?" Emma didn't answer. Maya's face softened. "You okay?" "I don't know," Emma whispered. That night she sat on her fire escape with her notebook in her lap. She wrote, "If someone builds a future, for you, is it still yours?" She thought of the hotel, of the silence in Nathan's voice, of the warmth that had once existed between them, now buried beneath threats and fear. Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She bought a bus ticket, 2 hours north, to the place they hadn't finished dreaming yet. The bus pulled into the small northern town just after 9 a.m. It was the kind of place where even the air moved slower, where leaves clung stubbornly to branches, as if unwilling to surrender to winter. Emma stepped off with a quiet breath, holding nothing but a worn satchel and the blueprint rolled inside. She hadn't told Nathan she was coming. She didn't even know what she was walking into. But there was a pull in her chest, insistent and wordless, that told her she had to see the dream one more time before deciding if it was worth the fall. The walk up to the hotel was longer than she remembered, or maybe the silence just made it feel that way. The trees arched over the narrow road like guardians of a secret, and the gravel crunched beneath her boots in rhythmic defiance. With every step, the knot in her stomach tightened. She wasn't sure if she wanted Nathan to be there. She didn't know what she would say if he was. But the questions had grown louder than the fear, and she needed to answer them for herself. When she reached the property, the sight took her breath for a moment. The hotel still looked haunted, still stood in half-collapse and quiet defiance. But it no longer felt like a ruin. Something had changed. There were signs of life, scaffolding against one wall, fresh boards stacked near the porch, and the front door, once sealed tight with chains, now stood open, cracked just wide enough to whisper, "Come in." Emma paused at the top step, heart pounding in her chest. She stepped inside cautiously. Dust clung to the air in golden streams, catching the morning light in soft, sacred angles. The silence was complete, except for the soft sound of wind moving through broken windows. She called out, not loudly, just enough to feel her voice fill the space. "Hello!" Footsteps echoed from somewhere deeper inside, followed by a faint clatter and the unmistakable sound of someone swearing softly under their breath. Nathan appeared from around the corner a moment later, wearing old jeans, paint on his sleeves, hair disheveled in a way that made him look more human than ever. He stopped when he saw her, paintbrush still in hand, eyes wide. "Emma?" he asked, almost like saying her name made her real. "You came." She didn't smile. "Not yet. You left the door open." His shoulders fell slightly. "I was hoping you might walk through it." There was a long pause between them, the kind where 1,000 things could be said, and none of them come out. Emma took another step into the light. "I couldn't stop thinking about it, the plans, this place, you." Her voice wavered only slightly. "But I needed to see it again, not just in blueprints or memory. I needed to feel it." Nathan set the brush down gently on a windowsill. "I started clearing the east wing. Behind the plaster there's brickwork, raw, imperfect, beautiful. We were going to cover it, but now I think maybe it should stay visible." He looked up at her. "Maybe we shouldn't hide the bones of things anymore." Emma looked around slowly, letting the dust and silence wrap around her. "This place isn't just architecture, Nathan. It's a reflection. It's broken but still standing, still trying." She turned to him. "Just like us." Nathan took a tentative step forward. "I meant to call 12 times, but I kept thinking I'd say the wrong thing, that I'd pull you deeper into something dangerous." "Stop deciding what I can handle," Emma said sharply. "If this matters, then let me choose it. Don't protect me by pushing me away." His voice cracked when he replied, "I wasn't just protecting you. I was protecting the only part of me that felt real." She held his gaze for a long, long moment, then opened her satchel and unrolled the blueprint between them. It was creased and smudged, worn from travel and indecision, but it still held the lines they'd drawn together. The library in the east wing, the cafe lit by morning sun, the tiny notes in the margins written in 2 different hands. "I still believe in this," she said quietly, "but I won't build it alone." "I never expected you to," he whispered. She took a step closer. "There's one condition. No more secrets, no more ghosting, no more letting fear speak. For you." Nathan nodded slowly, like a man waking from a long sleep. "Then I need you to know. They threatened everything. My name, your safety, the funding. They want me to return to the board or disappear from the company entirely." "And what do you want?" Emma asked. He looked around the room, at the cracked walls, the sunlight spilling through broken glass, the map of their dream between them. Then back at her. "I want to build something that can't be taken away. Something real. Something that doesn't have a brand or a stock price." He stepped forward again. "I want to build it with you." She didn't cry, but something inside her softened, broke, and reformed all at once. She reached out and took his hand. "Then let's build it." And in the unfinished bones of a forgotten hotel, a promise was made. Quiet, unspoken, but undeniable. A beginning, not of construction or design, but of belief. Nathan woke before the sun, hands stained with paint, eyes stinging from the night he barely slept. The silence in the unfinished hotel had become a kind of music to him, boards creaking, underwind, tools clinking as they shifted slightly on the floor, the occasional birdsong breaking through the fractured windows. He stood by the newly cleared east wall, watching light spill through the gaps. Beneath the rubble, beauty waited. It was always like that. Beneath the mess, something sacred. Emma arrived an hour later, hair tied up, clipboard under one arm, coffee in the other. She didn't knock, she just entered like she belonged, because she did. Nathan turned as she walked in. "I wasn't sure you'd come back." She handed him the coffee. "I wasn't sure either." A beat passed. "But I want this. I want to work. Let's stop talking and start building." And they did. For the next 3 days, they threw themselves into it. They measured floors, tore down walls, argued about window placement, debated lighting like it was a political stance. But through it all, they laughed. Sometimes softly, sometimes like it broke something open inside them. At night, they shared takeout on the porch steps and traced constellations with tired fingers. It was messy, it was real, but reality never stays quiet for long. On the 4th morning, Nathan's phone buzzed while he was hauling debris. A short message. "Your father is coming tomorrow." That was it. No context, no warning. He stared at the screen until the battery died. Emma noticed his shift immediately. He became sharper, less present, his answers clipped. When she finally asked, he didn't lie. "He's coming. To shut this down, probably for good." Emma didn't flinch. "Then let him see it. Let him. See what you're choosing." Nathan shook his head. "You don't understand. He doesn't come to understand. He comes to conquer." She stepped closer. "Then don't give him anything to conquer." That night, Nathan couldn't sleep. He walked through the skeleton of their dream, flashlight bouncing off exposed brick and half-finished plans. He remembered walking through hotel lobbies as a boy, his father's hand firm on his shoulder, always saying, "Appearances are everything." But here, in this mess, appearances were nothing. Intention was everything. Emma stayed in the upstairs loft. She was writing in her notebook again, thoughts, blueprints, quotes from books that made the silence feel less lonely. She paused when she heard footsteps below. She knew he wasn't resting. He didn't know how to rest when fear crawled into him like that. The next day came like a storm without thunder. Gregory Callahan arrived in a car that didn't belong on roads with this much dirt. His coat was perfect. His shoes gleamed, and his face, sharp, unreadable, took in the hotel like it was a battlefield. Nathan met him at the steps. No handshake, no welcome, just silence. "What is this?" Gregory asked, sweeping his hand toward the construction site. "This," Nathan said, "is mine." Gregory stepped forward. "You could have had everything. A legacy. A name that means something." Nathan didn't blink. "A name that meant someone else's version of power." Emma watched from the side, arms crossed, standing between beams. Gregory noticed her, eyes narrowing. "And who's she? The muse of your midlife crisis?" Nathan bristled. "She's the reason this place is more than empty brick." Gregory laughed once. "You think this will last? You think love makes you immune to failure?" Emma stepped forward, voice calm but unflinching. "No, but pretending fear is wisdom only makes you a coward." Gregory stared at her, then turned back to his son. "This is your last chance. Come home or be cut off." Nathan didn't hesitate. "Then cut me off." Silence. Then Gregory turned and walked away, just like that. And when his car disappeared into the distance, Nathan sat on the porch steps, Emma beside him. He didn't say anything, but she took his hand, held it tight, and for the first time, he didn't feel abandoned. He felt free. The days that followed Gregory Callahan's departure were eerily quiet. too quiet. Nathan knew it wasn't over. His father never lost battles outright. He just retreated, waited, recalibrated. But Nathan didn't speak of it. Instead, he threw himself into the work like a man trying to outrun an avalanche he couldn't see. Yet, his hands bled more. His voice grew hoarse, but the hotel began to change. The dream was shaping into something you could finally touch. Emma worked alongside him every day, sleeves rolled to her elbows, sawdust in her hair, boots caked with mud. She learned to hang drywall, to pour concrete, to argue about trim like her life depended on it. But more than that, she learned the shape of Nathan's silence, what it meant when he avoided her eyes or traced invisible lines on the plans late at night. He was bracing for impact, and she hated that she couldn't stop it. One night, she found him on the second-floor balcony, sitting in the dark. She didn't say anything at first, just sat next to him, letting the cold night press against them like a blanket made of glass. Finally, he spoke. "I used to think being strong meant never letting anyone see you break, but now, I don't know." Emma didn't look at him. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe strength is breaking where people can see and not caring how ugly it looks. He laughed once, a quiet, broken thing. "Then I must be the strongest. A man alive." They sat in silence until the sky turned lavender. Back in the city, news traveled fast. The Callahan name was still powerful, still whispered behind champagne flutes and boardroom doors. Rumors circled. Nathan had gone rogue, was investing in emotional real estate, had lost his mind to a waitress or a poet or both. None of it was true. All of it hurt. An email arrived the next morning from a private account, short and cruel. "She'll leave you too. They always do." Nathan didn't show Emma, but he saved the message. That day, she noticed his silence deepen. His answers clipped, his gaze distant. When she confronted him over lunch, he shook his head. "It's fine, just tired." But she didn't believe it. "You don't have to protect me from your pain, Nathan," she said. "You just have to let me stand next to it." He looked at her like that was the scariest thing anyone had ever offered him. That evening, they worked late into the night, finalizing electrical routes and ceiling fixtures. The wiring buzzed faintly in the walls, a pulse, a heartbeat forming, inside the skeleton of the place. At one point, Emma looked up at him and asked, "What if we finish it and no one comes?" Nathan paused. "Then we'll sit in the silence and know we built something with our hands, that we carved something into the world." She smiled faintly. That might be enough. The next morning, a stranger arrived at the hotel. A man in a charcoal suit, polished and forgettable. He asked for Nathan, handed him a sealed folder, then left without a word. Inside, a legal notice. Gregory had filed for asset reassignment, a slow bleed of all remaining funds in Nathan's name. His accounts, his properties, frozen. Nathan stared at the document in stunned silence. Emma read it over his shoulder. "So that's it?" she asked quietly. "No," Nathan replied, his voice calm. "That's just the price." "But how will we keep building?" He looked around the structure. "We build slower, smarter, with help." That night, Nathan posted something online for the first time in months, a photo of the exposed brick wall, lit by lanterns, captioned only with, "Some things are worth the cost." The post went viral, and the next day, help began arriving. The next morning, Emma stepped outside the half-finished hotel and nearly dropped her coffee. 2 vans were parked in the gravel lot. Volunteers, some local, some from nearby towns, unloading supplies. Paint, reclaimed wood, second-hand lighting fixtures. They introduced themselves in soft voices and steady handshakes. A woman named Deirdre from a restoration non-profit. A guy named Tom who worked salvage jobs upstate. Word had gotten out. People had come. Nathan stood beside her, stunned. How did they... She showed him his own post. It had been shared almost 70,000 times overnight. Comments flooded in. "This is what we need. Tell me how I can help. I want to believe in something again." He ran a hand through his hair, speechless. Emma just smiled. Looks like people still read the quiet parts. With the arrival of new hands, the work changed. It was no longer just the two of them filling the silence. Laughter echoed off scaffolds. Hammers beat out rhythms of hope. One of the volunteers brought a radio. Someone baked pies. The hotel felt alive in a way it hadn't in decades. Emma noticed it in the way the light now entered through the cut window frames, like it had been waiting. But with new voices came new exposure. A local journalist arrived, notebook in hand, eyes wide with ambition. "This place has buzz," she said. "But everyone wants to know, why would a Callahan walk away from the empire?" Nathan froze. Emma answered for him. "Because some empires don't build people, they bury them." The article ran 2 days later, and suddenly Emma wasn't just a bookstore girl anymore. She was the woman behind the rogue hotel restoration, a headline that made her want to disappear. She hated the way the world tried to brand human moments, as if love, pain, or belief could be distilled into clickbait. Nathan apologized over and over, but the damage wasn't his to own. The attention brought more volunteers, more supplies, but also more questions, more photos, more strangers asking if they were together. Nathan never answered. Emma never clarified. Something between them had grown too fragile to label. Late one night, they stood in what would soon be the library, Emma's fingerprints still dusted, with charcoal from tracing design lines. "You okay?" Nathan asked. She nodded slowly. "Just wondering if the story we're telling is still ours." He didn't speak for a while. Then, "We didn't build this for them, but maybe we can share it without losing it." She stared at him. "And us?" Nathan looked down. "That's harder." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the temporary windows. Inside, Emma stepped close. "Do you want this to be something real?" He looked at her. "It already is." She reached out and touched the exposed brick. "Then don't let them turn it into a product." "I won't." The next day, a delivery arrived. 6 crates of books, first editions, donations, rare titles, sent anonymously. Inside one, a letter written in delicate cursive, "For the library you haven't yet named, for the voices you haven't yet heard." Emma cried quietly, her fingers tracing the spines. They named the library that night, the Quiet Wing. No ribbon cutting, no PR, just a sign carved by hand, hung under moonlight, a promise whispered in stone. The final phase of construction felt like exhaling after a long-held breath. The walls stood clean and strong, the floors gleamed with reclaimed wood, and the old ballroom had become a sunlit cafe with mismatched chairs and tables designed for long conversations. Emma walked through the space one evening, barefoot, letting her fingers trail across the cool surfaces like she was memorizing them. This was no longer a concept, it was real. Nathan stood at the entrance, watching her in silence. She hadn't seen him arrive, but he often did that lately, hovering at the edge of her awareness, like a thought not yet formed. She turned, catching his gaze. "It's almost done," she said. He nodded, voice quiet. "I didn't think we'd get this far." She walked toward him. "You're not allowed to be surprised by hope anymore." He smiled, but it didn't last. "What happens after this?" he asked, and she knew he wasn't talking about the building. She sighed. "We open the doors. We let people in. We let them make it theirs." "And us?" he asked again, softer now. "Do we stay in the dream we built? Or do we wake up?" Emma hesitated. "That depends," she said. "Are you ready to stop running?" Nathan looked down. "I've given up everything, my name, my future in that world." "But not your fear," she replied. "You still treat this us like it might disappear if you breathe too hard." He didn't argue. That silence said more than words. The volunteers left the next day, most of them promising to return once the hotel opened. Emma hugged Deirdre and Tom like family. Nathan shook hands with each person, quiet gratitude in his eyes. When the last car disappeared down the dirt road, the stillness felt almost sacred, just the two of them again, back where it started. That evening, they sat on the front steps, sipping wine from mismatched glasses. The sunset stretched the shadows long and red across the fields. Nathan watched it fade before turning to her. "You've been carrying me through this," he said. Emma tilted her head. "You're heavier than you look." He laughed, but there was a sadness behind it. "Sometimes I wonder if I asked you to build this with me just to feel less alone." Emma didn't flinch. "And I wonder if I said yes because I didn't know how to ask for something I really wanted." Their eyes met. "So what do you want now?" he asked. She set her glass down. Clarity. They didn't kiss. Not that night. But they sat close enough for the spaces between them to finally breathe. The next morning, the electricity went out. A minor glitch, a downed wire. But it reminded them that even finished things could break. They spent the day fixing it together, rewiring circuits by flashlight, laughing when they nearly electrocuted themselves. It felt like poetry, broken systems, shared light. That night, Emma found a note on her pillow, in Nathan's handwriting. "Tomorrow I want to show you the one room I haven't opened." She didn't sleep. The next day he led her down a narrow hallway to a small door. Inside, a room untouched, bare except for a single framed photograph, Nathan's mother, standing in front of the hotel before it ever opened, eyes wild with hope. "I never brought anyone here," he said, "not even when I was a kid. But this was her room, her dream." Emma stepped inside, breath shallow. She built something before anyone believed in it. "So did you," he said. Then he turned to her, voice shaking slightly. "I love you." Emma blinked. "I don't have a fortune anymore, or a name. That opens doors, but if this place is my legacy, I want it to begin with you." She stood in silence, then reached for his hand. "You don't need to be anything more than this," she whispered. And for the first time, they weren't almost. They simply were. The morning of the opening came wrapped in gold. The sky, pale and cloudless, stretched across the town like a fresh canvas. Birds moved slow in the air, as if even nature sensed something sacred was unfolding. Emma stood in the cafe, wiping down the last table, her apron still wrinkled, heart thrumming faster than she wanted to admit. Today wasn't just the start of a business, it was the unveiling of a promise. A lived-in dream made of dust, doubt, and deliberate hope. Nathan was outside, pacing on the gravel, not nervous, just full. There was a tension in his chest, the kind that comes when you know your life is changing but don't yet know how to hold it. He wore no suit, no tie, just a simple button-down and the look of someone who had fought for something without knowing what he'd lose to get it. He smiled when he saw her through the window. Guests began to arrive slowly. Locals, travelers, former volunteers. A woman with a camera gently asked if she could take photos. Emma nodded. "But only if you capture the quiet parts too." The woman smiled like she understood. A family wandered into the library, children tracing their fingers along the wooden shelves. In the corner, a retired teacher read a donated novel in silence. No grand speeches, just people becoming part of the space. Emma stepped into the hallway and looked down toward the quiet wing. She followed the sound of pages turning. There, at the far wall, sat Gregory Callahan. He didn't move when she entered. She stood near the door. "We didn't invite press, just people who believed in it." He closed the book gently. "I'm not press." "No, she said. But I wasn't sure you believed in anything but power. He met her eyes. I believed in my son once. When he was 5, he built a hotel out of cardboard boxes, said it was for tired people who had nowhere else to go. A pause. Somewhere along the way, I taught him that people who had nowhere else to go didn't matter. Emma sat across from him. He didn't believe that anymore. I know, Gregory said softly. That's why I'm here. Outside, Nathan was greeting new guests when he saw his father emerge. Their eyes met across the gravel. Gregory gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Nathan didn't smile. But he didn't look away either. By afternoon, the hotel was full of voices. The scent of fresh bread drifted from the kitchen. Children played in the courtyard. The rooms, each one finished by hand, opened with soft clicks as guests arrived. Emma watched it all from the stairs, her notebook in hand, untouched. For the first time in weeks, some things no longer needed to be written down. That night, Nathan led her to the rooftop, just the two of them. Above them, stars hung like punctuation marks. Below, laughter echoed up through stone. I didn't think we'd make it, he said. Emma leaned against his shoulder. You didn't. He looked at her, confused. We did, she corrected. He smiled, then pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Her breath caught. I don't have a diamond, he said. Just this place. Just this life. Just me. Emma opened the box. Inside was a ring made of reclaimed wood and silver, simple, honest. I don't need a diamond, she whispered. She didn't say yes. She didn't have to. She kissed him, slow, certain, like punctuation at the end of a sentence they'd both been writing for years. And downstairs, someone checked into room 1, the first guest, the beginning of everything. Wow, what a story, right? I'd love to hear what you thought. Drop a comment, rate it from 1 to 10, and tell me where you're watching from. And hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out the other stories we have on the channel. There's so much more waiting for you.